It was the kind of town where you didn't have to lock your doors. A postcard-perfect slice of America, with a white steepled church on the green and the sound of lawnmowers droning on a Saturday afternoon. The kind of place where parents still let their kids roam free until the streetlights came on, because everyone knew everyone and nothing bad ever happened here. That was the summer the light started to die. It began, as these things always do, on a day that was impossibly ordinary. The air was thick with the scent of cut grass and the distant chime of an ice cream truck. On Elm Street, a boy no older than 7 was trying to catch fireflies in a jar, his high-pitched laughter carrying on the warm breeze. 2 doors down, a little girl in a pink dress was drawing hopscotch squares on the sidewalk with a piece of chalk, her tongue poked out in concentration. Just another perfect, golden evening in a town that time forgot. Then, the laughter stopped. Not with a scream, not with a crash, it just ended. The mother on Elm Street, glancing up from her kitchen sink, felt a sudden, profound silence settle over the neighborhood. It was a silence that felt wrong. It had weight. It pressed in on her ears until she could hear her own heartbeat. She stepped onto the porch, a dish towel still in her hands, and called out his name. Jamie, time to come in. The only answer was the rustle of a newspaper in a gutter and the distant bark of a dog that sounded nervous, uncertain. She walked to the edge of the yard, her voice a little tighter now, a little sharper. Jamie. The hopscotch squares were there, a perfect trail of chalky numbers leading to a dead end. The jar for the fireflies lay on its side in the grass, empty. That was 3 months ago. And then there was the Murphy girl. She was last seen on her bike in the driveway, training wheels glinting in the late sun. The bike was found leaning against the mailbox, as if she'd just parked it for a moment. The mom's calls for dinner were met by the same unnerving quiet. They just disappeared. Poof. Like smoke. Like they were never there at all. Now, the streets of this perfect American town are empty after dusk. The laughter is a ghost. The screen's doors are locked tight, and the parents sit on their porches, not with lemonade, but with coffee that grows cold in their hands, their eyes scanning the shadows that gather under the trees. The police have no leads. The FBI has no clues. There are no witnesses, no strange cars, no footprints leading away. All they have are the photos. Smiling faces on missing posters that flutter against telephone poles in the wind, their bright eyes staring out at a town that can no longer protect its own. They say a town that loses its children loses its future. But this town has lost something worse. It's lost its innocence. Because the most terrifying thing isn't a monster in the dark. It's when the dark reaches into the light, into your own backyard, and takes what it wants. And no one, not a single soul, can tell you why. The first and most crucial step in telling a story like this is to build a world so safe, so familiar, and so undeniably wholesome that the audience feels they are not merely listening to a tale, but remembering a place they have known their entire lives. This is the foundation upon which all the horror that follows must be constructed. Without this bedrock of normalcy, the disappearances become just another statistic, a piece of bad news from a distant place. But when you anchor the horror in the archetype of the perfect American town, you make it personal. You make it about the viewer's own childhood street, their own front porch, their own memories of a time when the world felt small and safe. You weaponize nostalgia. This town is not named, because it doesn't need a name. It is every town. It is the place where the concept of neighbor still means something. The architecture of the description is deliberate. The white steepled church on the green is a symbol of moral clarity and community gathering, a visual shorthand for a people bound by shared faith and tradition. The sound of lawnmowers droning on a Saturday afternoon is the universal soundtrack of suburban peace, a mundane and slightly irritating noise that, in retrospect, becomes the comforting hum of a world in order. These are not just details, they are emotional anchors. They signal to the audience that this is a realm governed by rules, by routine, by the gentle rhythms of middle-class American life. The most potent detail in this entire setup, however, is the line about unlocked doors. In the lexicon of American symbolism, an unlocked door is the ultimate signifier of trust and safety. It is a declaration that the dangers of the wider world, the crime, the strangers, the chaos, have not breached this idyllic perimeter. The people here believe in the inherent goodness of their fellow man, or at the very least, they believe that evil is something that happens in other places, to other people, in the big cities they see on the news. This unlocked door is a physical manifestation of the town's innocence. It is an invitation to the audience to let their own guard down, to slip into that comfortable, half-remembered feeling of absolute security they may have felt as a child. Then, there is the statement about the children allowed to roam free until the streetlights came on. This is perhaps the most emotionally charged element of the introduction. It is a ritual that transcends generations, a rite of passage that defines a certain kind of American childhood. It evokes images of bicycle gangs, of games of hide and seek that stretched into the twilight, of the distant, reassuring call of a parent's voice from the porch. It represents a golden era of perceived freedom, a time before helicopter parenting and 24-hour news cycles filled with anxiety. By invoking this image, the speech connects the audience to their own inner child. It makes them feel the phantom coolness of twilight grass on their bare feet and the bittersweet pang of a summer evening ending. It is a memory so potent that it feels almost sacred. By meticulously constructing this fortress of safety, this monument to normalcy, the speech creates the maximum possible dramatic tension. It convinces the audience, on a deep and emotional level, that this is the last place on earth where something terrible should ever happen. When the first child vanishes, it will not be a shock that comes from a dark alley or a haunted house, it will be a violation of the natural order. It will be a crack in the very foundation of reality. The horror will be amplified exponentially because the setting was so aggressively, so lovingly, so deceptively safe. The audience will be left not just with a fear of the dark, but with a profound and unsettling distrust of the light. To follow the construction of an impossibly safe world, the narrative must then populate that world with the most vulnerable and cherished figures imaginable, children in the midst of simple, universal play. This is the moment where the abstract setting becomes achingly specific, where the town on the green is no longer just a place, but the stage for the final, innocent moments of real lives. The power of this section lies not in grand, dramatic gestures, but in the quiet, meticulous observation of the ordinary. The goal is to make the audience see these children not as characters in a story, but as the ghost of every child they have ever known, perhaps even the ghost of their own younger self. The description of the boy on Elm Street is a masterclass in this technique. He is not given a generic label, he is a boy no older than 7, an age that sits on the precise cusp of awareness and innocence. He is engaged in an activity as old as time itself, trying to catch fireflies in a jar. This image is drenched in nostalgia and delicate beauty. It speaks of summer evenings, of wonder at the natural world, of a small hand reaching out to capture a tiny piece of magic. His high-pitched laughter, carried on the warm breeze, is the very sound of joy unburdened by fear. It is a sound designed to trigger a protective, almost parental instinct in the listener. We hear that laughter, and we smile. We are invested in this boy's happiness without even knowing his name. Just a few doors down, the scene is mirrored and reinforced with another child, another quintessential image of childhood. The little girl in the pink dress, drawing hopscotch squares on the sidewalk with a piece of chalk, her tongue poked out in concentration. This detail of the tongue is everything. It is a moment of such profound and relatable realism that it transcends fiction. Every person listening has either been that child, so focused on a task that they unconsciously stick out their tongue, or has adored a child who does the same. It is a tiny, perfect flaw that makes her utterly real, utterly human, and utterly precious. The hopscotch squares themselves are a beautiful metaphor for the path of a child's life, structured, hopeful, moving forward one step at a time toward an unseen goal. The sidewalk is her canvas, and her art is a declaration of her presence in the world. These are not scenes of action, they are scenes of being. The children are not doing anything remarkable. They are not preparing for an adventure or defying a warning. They are simply existing in their purest, most joyful state. This is the cruelest trick the storyteller plays. By showing us these moments of perfect, mundane happiness, the speech forces us to fall in love with these fleeting, ghostly images. We are made to witness the last few seconds of their ordinary lives, the final heartbeat of a world that is about to shatter. The setting itself conspires to heighten this sense of fragile beauty. It is just another perfect, golden evening in a town that time forgot. The light is golden, the kind of late afternoon light that photographers chase, that painters try to capture. It is a light that seems to bless everything it touches, lending a sacred quality to the simple acts of play. The phrase "a town that time forgot" reinforces the idea that this place is a bubble, a sanctuary preserved from the ravages of the modern world. It is a place where innocence can still flourish, untouched by cynicism or fear. This makes the impending violation all the more monstrous. To shatter such a piece is not just a crime, it is a desecration. By the time this section concludes, the audience is not just listening to a story about missing children. They are mourning specific children. They can see the jar, the chalk, the pink dress. They can hear the laughter. They have been invited into the last perfect moment of these children's lives, and they are holding that moment in their hands like a fragile, precious thing. And that is precisely when the storyteller is ready to let it slip. The most terrifying sound in the world is not a scream. A scream, for all its horror, is a sound of life, of struggle, of something happening. It is a declaration that a battle is being fought, that there is still something to fight for. True, primal horror arrives not with a noise, but with its sudden and absolute absence. It is the moment. The laughter dies, the chatter ceases, and the world holds its breath. This is the fulcrum upon which the entire story turns, the precise point where the familiar world of golden evenings and careless play tilts into the abyss of the unknown. The horror begins in the silence. The transition is engineered to be as jarring as it is subtle. One moment, the air is rich with the high-pitched, carefree laughter of a boy chasing fireflies. It is the soundtrack of summer, of safety, of life as it should be. The next moment, that sound is simply gone. The narrative does not allow for a gradual fade or a natural end to the play. It just ended. This abruptness is key. It creates a cognitive dissonance in the listener, a feeling that something in the order of things has been violently interrupted. Our brains are wired to expect continuity. When a sound stops abruptly, our attention snaps to attention, searching for the cause. The story forces the audience into the same state of sudden, anxious alertness as the mother who is about to step onto her porch. The description of the silence itself is where the true craft of the horror emerges. It is not merely quiet. It is a silence that felt wrong. It had weight. This personification of silence transforms it from an absence into a presence. It becomes a living, breathing entity that descends upon the neighborhood, thick and suffocating. It is a silence that presses in on her ears, a physical sensation that blocks out the world and forces her to confront the frantic rhythm of her own heartbeat. The mother's body knows something is wrong before her mind can form the thought. Her own pulse becomes the herald of her dread, a drumbeat counting down the seconds to a realization she does not want to face. This is a masterful manipulation of the audience's own senses. By describing the silence as having weight and pressure, the storyteller invites the listener to feel that same oppressive stillness. We are no longer observing the scene from a safe distance, we are standing on that porch with her, feeling the wrongness in the air, straining our own ears for a sound that will not come. The specific, mundane details that break the silence only amplify the dread. The rustle of a newspaper in a gutter is not a comforting sound of human activity, it is the lonely, aimless noise of an object abandoned. The distant bark of a dog that sounded nervous, uncertain transforms the town's collective unease into an audible warning. Even the animals sense that the natural order has been breached. The most chilling aspect of this silence is its indiscriminate nature. It does not announce what it has taken. It simply marks the spot where something precious used to be. The mother calls out a name, first casually, then with a tightening voice, and finally with a sharp edge of panic. Each unanswered call is a hammer blow against the walls of her reality. The silence is not empty, it is full of the absence of her child. It is a void in the shape of a boy. When she finally reaches the yard, the evidence of his former presence is cruelly mundane. The jar for the fireflies lies on its side in the grass, empty. The container for the captured light is now just a hollow piece of glass, a perfect metaphor for the neighborhood itself. The light is gone, and all that remains is the fragile, useless vessel that once held it, waiting in the oppressive, living silence for a laughter that will never come. The silence that descends upon the neighborhood is not an ending but a beginning, a threshold that the parents must now cross into a waking nightmare. The fourth keynote shifts the focus from the atmospheric dread of the event to the raw, visceral, and deeply human aftermath of absence. This is where the horror becomes personal, intimate, and agonizingly specific. The story moves from the question of what happened to the infinitely more painful question of where is my child. This is the moment when the abstract fear crystallizes into a piercing, personal anguish that every listener can instinctively understand, regardless of whether they are a parent themselves. The mother on Elm Street steps onto her porch with a dish towel still in her hands, and this small, domestic detail is a masterstroke of tragic irony. That towel represents the world that was, the world of chores and routines and the comforting predictability of daily life. She is still holding on to the ordinary, even as she steps into the extraordinary. Her first call for Jamie is casual, a routine summons to the dinner table, a ritual performed 1,000 times before. Time to come in. These are the most common words in the parental lexicon, words that have always been answered with the thundering of small feet and the slam of a screen door. But this time, there is only the rustle of the newspaper and the nervous bark of a dog. The gradual escalation of her voice is a perfect depiction of dawning horror. It is not a single moment of realization but a slow, creeping dread that tightens its grip with each unanswered call. The dish towel is forgotten. The casual tone is replaced by something tighter, sharper. The name is called again, not as a reminder, but as a plea. The journey from the porch to the edge of the yard is a journey of a few feet that spans the entire distance between a normal life and an unthinkable one. With every step, the mother is leaving behind the person she was just moments ago and becoming someone new, someone defined by loss and the desperate, futile search for answers. The details she finds are not clues, they are accusations. The hopscotch squares are still there, a perfect trail of chalky numbers leading to a dead end. The child who drew them has vanished into thin air, leaving behind only this fragile, impermanent art as proof that she ever existed. The squares are a mocking path to nowhere, a childish game that has become a grim metaphor for the parent's own search. The jar for the fireflies lies on its side in the grass, empty. This image carries a devastating double meaning. The child who sought to capture light and magic has himself been captured, snatched away by a darkness so complete that it leaves no trace. The empty jar is a symbol of a life interrupted, of potential unfulfilled, of a small hand that will never again reach for the fireflies. The second disappearance, the Murphy girl, reinforces the pattern and deepens the sense of helplessness. Her bike was found leaning against the mailbox, as if she'd just parked it for a moment. This detail is perhaps the most haunting of all. It suggests an absence of struggle, a vanishing so swift and so complete that the child didn't even have time to let her bike fall to the ground. It was simply parked, as if for a moment, as if she fully intended to return. The image of that bike, standing upright and waiting, becomes a permanent monument to a departure that was never meant to happen. The mom's calls for dinner, the same mundane summons, are met by the same unnerving quiet. The word unnerving is carefully chosen. It means to cause someone to lose their nerve, their courage, their composure. This is precisely what the silence does. It does not just frighten the parents, it systematically dismantles their ability to cope, leaving them stranded in a reality where the most basic rules of life no longer apply, holding onto dish towels and staring at empty driveways, forever waiting for an answer that will never come. The individual disappearances, as horrifying as they are, could potentially be dismissed as isolated tragedies, terrible but perhaps explicable events that a community might eventually process and heal from. The true, soul-crushing weight of the horror, however, descends with the revelation that these are not isolated incidents. They are a pattern. This is the moment when fear mutates from a sharp, personal grief into a pervasive, communal disease. The story shifts from the tragedy of one family to the haunting of an entire town, and in doing so, it transforms the narrative from a mystery into a waking nightmare from which there is no escape. The phrase that becomes the chilling mantra of the town, "They just disappeared," is deceptively simple, but its power lies in its utter inadequacy. It is a sentence that explains nothing. It is a linguistic shrug in the face of the impossible. The ellipsis, the pause before the final word, is the sound of a mind struggling to comprehend the incomprehensible. It is the verbal equivalent of staring into an empty space where a child,